So this is the final stop in our journey. It's also the third place that Lord Ashcroft is a citizen. The UK, Belize, and here, the Turks and Caicos Islands.
It's a tourist resort for the wealthy and a tax haven for their millions. A former colony, it never fully got independence and remains a British overseas territory. But last year, the government was suspended after the Premier and 4 of his cabinet were accused of corruption. The islands are now ruled from London. Sean Malcolm was one of those who first raised the alarm.
We have been through a dark period here in the Turks and Caicos Island. Corruption has literally destroyed everything we have worked for, our foreparents have worked for.
And British police are now involved. A team of detectives is working on the islands, a criminal investigation into the allegations of corruption. And some of the transactions they are looking at involve multi-million-dollar loans from Lord Ashcroft's bank, which is run by his son, Andrew.
This is Lord Ashcroft's bank here on the Turks and Caicos. It used to be called the Belize Bank, now it's called the British Caribbean Bank. And it's a very active business. It's lent $250 million, which makes it the biggest lender here on the Turks and Caicos.
One of the people the bank lent money to was Michael Mizik, the country's former premier who went from being an estate agent to living in this luxurious mansion with his TV star wife. Mr. Mizik is now at the heart of the corruption allegations.
Michael Mizik was the minister of everything. He controlled the business licensing board, he controlled crown land, he controlled development, inward investment. So all the vital services that you needed, you had to go to the premier.
He's also a man who did business with Lord Ashcroft's bank. Panorama has discovered the UK detectives are looking into a $5 million loan Mr. Mizik received from Belize Bank. The interest alone would have been about $500,000 a year. Mr. Mizik told an inquiry examining the initial allegations of corruption that he had made repayments, but he didn't produce any clear documentary evidence that anything had been paid back. His deputy, Floyd Hall, was involved in obtaining an even larger loan from Belize Bank for $19 million. We understand that detectives will be asking the bank about the circumstances in which both of the loans were made. Politicians from both of TCI's main political parties want to know more about the Belize Bank loans.
They were very, very shocking when they came out in the disclosure, the limited disclosure at the Commission, because the general public had no idea that our government ministers were receiving such a large amount of loans from private institutions.
We need answers. We need to know, why was Belize Bank forwarding so much cash to our political leaders?
Lord Ashcroft's lawyers said it would break banking law to comment on anyone's financial arrangements without their permission. Mr. Mizik has refused to talk to us, and Mr. Hall denies wrongdoing. But it's not just the loans that have made Lord Ashcroft controversial here. It's this resort. Here's the yacht he uses, the Lady M, moored outside a brand new hotel, part of the multi-million-pound Leeward Resort. And here's Lord Ashcroft's son Andrew enjoying the launch party, which was attended by stars like Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. The resort was built by an American developer called Rodney Props here at the official opening.
Members of the cabinet and distinguished and honored guests, welcome to the opening.
But here in the Turks and Caicos, this is a very controversial development because of the damage it's caused to a national park. The Leeward Resort relied on its super-rich customers arriving by yacht, which meant a channel had to be dredged out to sea. David Douglas runs boat trips in the islands.
They got the license to dredge the channel to open up this new mega yacht marina. So probably a 1.5 mile stretch. So they would selectively rip The bottom probably averaged about 8 to 10 foot, and they ripped it to 14 or 15 feet.
This is a national park and dredging is normally banned. But the developer, Rodney Props, not only got permission to dredge here, he was allowed to dump thousands of tons of sand to build a man-made island. The work in the protected waters was only approved after the personal intervention of the Premier, Michael Mizik.
I'm not an overt environmentalist. I'm pro-business, but to dump 2 million cubic yards of fill a quarter mile up current from our most heavily traveled coral reef and smack dab in the middle of our most popular national park.
In the end, the court here ruled that Premier Mizik had exceeded his powers and the decision was illegal. And Panorama has learned that that decision is also being looked at by British police as part of their investigation in the islands. But what's this development got to do with Lord Ashcroft? Well, according to his lawyers, nothing at all. But talk to some of the people who built the resort and they'll tell you a rather different story. This is Gordon Williams. His company did the electrical and plumbing work.
The whole thing behind it was was an Ashcroft job. I mean, I don't even know the man now, but that was the word on the town if you talk to anyone.
And this is Scott Hulkey. His company built the swimming pool and restaurant.
It was clear to us we were working for a partnership between Rodney Props and Lord Ashcroft. Whenever Lord Ashcroft would visit the site, we were always instructed to make sure the site was clean and orderly, wanted to make sure that he left with a favorable impression.
But Lord Ashcroft has consistently denied any partnership. His lawyers told us he has never been in partnership as defined by any professional or business measure with Rodney Props. And he denies that he was at any time a partner in any development which has the word Leeward in the title. But in the last month there have been two significant developments. 2 weeks ago the stock exchange heard an announcement about the role of this man. Philip Osborne is one of Lord Ashcroft's senior employees. 7 months ago, we asked Lord Ashcroft if he knew Mr. Osborne was a director of 3 companies that were part of Rodney Props' development in Leeward. Lord Ashcroft's lawyers told us he did not know Mr. Osborne was a director of the 3 companies, if indeed he was. The thing is, he should have known because Lord Ashcroft's main company, BCB Holdings, should have told the stock exchange that its company secretary, Philip Osborne, was also a director of those Leeward development companies. The correction on the stock exchange only came after we pointed out the error. Mr. Osborne says the failure to disclose the directorships was an inadvertent oversight. The other significant development was when we received an email from Rodney Props, the man behind the development and someone you remember Lord Ashcroft led us to believe he's had nothing to do with. Mr. Props' email seems to contradict the impression we had been given. He says the Michael Ashcroft interests had become excellent passive financial investors in the Leeward projects, though he emphasises this was after they got underway. He goes on, the investment was managed in a very professional and proper manner, exactly what one would expect from a billionaire with worldwide investments, which would suggest Lord Ashcroft was involved. Some of the contractors were sure he was a partner, and when the project ran into trouble, they turned to Lord Ashcroft's senior employees to get their money.
We were informed by directors of Lord Ashcroft's companies that we would, both in meetings and over the phone, that on several occasions, as well as in emails, that payment to the different vendors, including ourselves, would be made.
Scott Hulkey eventually wrote to Lord Ashcroft directly about his debt of $500,000, and he was surprised by the response. He'd been told Lord Ashcroft was a partner, Now he was told Lord Ashcroft didn't own the hotel he'd been working on at all, and it was actually owned by a charitable trust.
I'm in disbelief. I mean, he was clearly a partner in the project. As a result of not being able to collect this money from Lord Ashcroft and the Leeward Resort, our company suffered severe hardship.
In the end, the project went bust and the receiver was called in. Now remember, lawyers for Lord Ashcroft gave us the clear impression that throughout this period, the project had nothing to do with him. But one man who should know disagrees. Rodney Props told us that 5 months before the project went bust, Lord Ashcroft had bought him out completely. He said, "I have not communicated with or seen Michael Ashcroft since February 2009 and was astounded that within 6 months of buying me out of the Leeward projects, he would place them in receivership."
We are struggling drastically right now, and don't know if we're going to survive, but we're, do my best. But we're hurting big time.
On the Turks and Caicos Islands, the corruption investigation led by British detectives continues. The island's fate will ultimately be decided by the Foreign Office in London, a department headed by William Hague. Last year, Sean Malcolm, the man who helped raise the alarm about the corruption here, wrote to David Cameron.
We respectfully and sincerely ask for your written assurances that Lord Ashcroft will not be influencing, directly or indirectly, decisions regarding the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Of course, 2 weeks ago, Lord Ashcroft resigned as Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, but he remains in the House of Lords.
I think if the Conservative Party is in need of someone to help it out both financially and perhaps politically, then we may well see Lord Ashcroft make a return to the political seat.
No one knows whether the Conservatives will ever need to turn again to Lord Ashcroft and his millions. If they do, the questions will return about the transparency of his business dealings and just where Lord Ashcroft's money comes from.
Richard Bilton reporting there, and Panorama now understands that the British detectives in the Turks and Caicos have asked the Electoral Commission here to share information gathered during its investigation into Lord Ashcroft's political donations.